Kevin, what's the best way to handle release forms for your documentary film, and then how important is it to actually have those release forms?
Well, it's critical to have the release forms. You're not going to have a film without the release forms. You won't get your E&O insurance without the release forms. You won't get a release. You won't get a distributor. You won't get anything without them. So you have to have them. Now, there's certain parameters about group shots and events and rallies where you don't have to have crowds signing release forms. But your principal sit-down interviews, you have to get release forms. And I have been meticulous throughout my career of getting release forms. And generally, you want to get them signed before you roll the interview. And then the one time I did not was the lesson that learned, and that was the case where I was interviewing someone who had experienced a great loss, and it took a long time to get them to the point where they said yes to do the interview. And so it was a very much of a kind of a evolving relationship of trust to get to the point where they would sit down in front of the camera and allow us into their life. And I always knew I should get that thing signed, but it was always, I didn't want to break this mood we were getting in, that we could trust each other. And we did the interviews and we did the story, and it turned out to be much bigger than we ever thought. And I finally went back because I established such a close relationship with this person that we're posting the film. I had all the other releases signed in the normal fashion I do, but I had not gotten this one done yet. And I went back to get the interview, and this person said no, they were not going to sign the release. And this story was so central to my film that without it, the film would have crumbled in that section. And so they said, no, I will not sign. The next thing I know, I get a phone call from an attorney saying they want a certain amount of money, which was a considerable amount of money, and which we had to pay and to get the release. And but it makes the film. But the point is, always get that release signed. And it's not a question of yes or no. You have to have a release. You're not going to get distributed without a release form.
So emails would not be binding in terms of someone agreeing to it. It's
I don't even think a verbal on-camera release is truly binding. They could say, I really didn't understand what I was saying yes to. If you have it on paper and they sign it, they understand that release form. So you have to be very careful about release forms.
You brought up something interesting, crowd shots. I did something the other day on a subway, and everybody was just staring at the camera, and I'm trying to get my subject. I had to use some of that footage. What rights does the public have in terms of what if someone sees that and says, no, you didn't get a release from me, and I see myself on camera there?
Well, that's a little different. Crowd shots, there's several sizes of crowd. It's not the Coliseum, or it's not a huge rally of some form on the mall in Washington, D.C. That's a crowd shot. On a subway, if you're being able to pick out faces, that's a different dilemma. Now, there's a lot of rules in this, but as long as you weren't hiding the camera, that's one thing in your favor, because they see a camera, they could always turn away, so the camera was present. Generally speaking, if it's going to be on any kind of broadcast TV, they're going to put up a sign saying, if we're filming here, you give your consent to be on camera, because that's on a professional level on a network. If you're on a subway, I'd be very careful about that, because especially if you're going to be showing faces, backs of faces and your character, fine, but you can't blame them. They're down, they're doing their thing, and you're going to be making money off this image probably if you sell this movie, and they're not consenting they were never asked for their consent to be in the shot. So you got to be careful when you recognize their face.
So it's okay, the backs of someone, the likeness of them from far away, but
not exactly, as long as they're not recognizable, or if there's so many and it's a public event where the news crews are public and your camera's in the open, that's a different thing. It's more of a news context.